I did wake up in my scheduled 4 a.m. audio recording, which means lively morning atmosphere and a bunch of cocks cocking in the back. In our last video, we examined the latest hottest take of what the out-of-touch game journalists think about the gaming industry. One of the greatest hottest take came from none other than the BBC. That's right, the BBC, where I heard it's mandatory to pay for their services. So imagine what happened when BBC decided to spread misinformation. This is where your money's going for, people at the UK.
Video games. How big is industry's racial diversity problem?
I have no idea what the author refers to as a racial diversity problem. Maybe we'll find out soon enough as we read through this tripe. But one thing I can say for sure is that I just couldn't care less. Are white people being actively racist by telling brown people like me to go suck Rin's dick? That is not racist. That is actually something I've been wanting to do.
When Uncharted: The Lost Legacy was released this year, it gained a lot of attention. Not because it is the latest installment for a popular franchise, it stood out for another reason.
Because the protagonist is not a dick?
The game was set in India, has two lead women, and one of them, Nadine Ross, is a black South African.
I was referring to the personality, but I guess the genitals work well. Also, has anyone ever mentioned that Nadine was voiced by Laura Bailey, a white girl? Like, wouldn't you guys be a bit up in arms about a black girl voiced by a white girl?
Other big releases this year include Assassin's Creed Origins, which is set in ancient Egypt with an African protagonist, while Star Wars Battlefront 2 used the likeness and voice of Janina Gavankar, an actress with part Indian heritage.
Congratulations, BBC! Your eye examination results just came out and it is indeed healthy and functional.
But speaking to BBC Asian Network, Joe Twist, chief executive for UK, the trading body for UK's game industry, said there was still a long way to go before video games could be truly representative of the gaming audience.
Representative of UK? US? The world? Are we talking about video games or the freaking UN?
She says there are not enough game designers from black or Asian backgrounds working, and that this is reflected in what we are playing.
Oh, okay, so reflective of Africa and Asia. Well, Asia is already well represented in Japanese video games, and Africa, well, I haven't heard of them developing any video games as of late, so try again, I guess.
There's not been a lot of research done on racial representation in games. The most up-to-date figure for employment in the games industry, though, are from a 2015 Creative Skill Set survey. It suggests only 4% of game designers in the UK come from black or Asian backgrounds. That's down from 4.7% in 2012 and below the national average of 10% across all sectors.
Wait, so we're talking about the UK all this time? The same UK that has about 87.17% white population as of 2011? What kind of representation you want? 50-50? If anything, 4.7% representation of black and Asian backgrounds is very accurate to the general population. Are you seriously going to expect everyone in the Asian or black backgrounds to be gamers or interested in gaming all of a sudden? If you're seriously thinking that you're gonna get an equal representation by having every black or Asians to be game developers or gamers, I wanna ask where you get your education from so that I can nuke it from orbit. All you need to debunk this representation nonsense is a brief look in the UK's racial demographic statistics. But BBC want to ignore that and achieve this utopian world where everybody can be represented equally. And by equally, I mean white people can go screw themselves and take a backseat in favor of blacks and Asians.
The appeal of gaming is huge. 21 million people play games in the UK, about half of them are women, and 27% of them are over the age of 44. Globally, 2.2 billion people play games in some form, and it's an industry that continues to grow.
21 million people play games in the UK. Now, using the demographic statistics, let's take the most unlikely scenario, which is assuming that every single Asian, black, mixed race, and other races in the UK are playing video games. That's right, all of them, every single one. They all suddenly have interest in gaming and want to play video games or be video game developers. That would only result in about 8 million people, as in 30% of the population in the UK who play video games who are not white. 70% of them are still white. So whatever kind of delusional fantasy world that you're living in where everyone is equally represented, reality disagrees with you, and unfortunately disagreeing with reality is only a couple of steps away into the insane asylum.
We asked 4 industry insiders from black and minority ethnic backgrounds if gaming had a diversity problem. The video games industry is not fine as it is. The racial background figures show it is not representative. The problem is widened out to class and gender too, so across the board there is a diversity issue.
There is only a diversity issue if you think that people in all races are distributed equally in the UK, which they are not. They are not equally distributed. If every freaking industry insider say this with a straight freaking face, well, looks like I have something new to target from the orbit. The article goes on and on about how there's a diversity problem in gaming. This isn't about white people being racist, this is about white people existing a lot more than non-white people in gaming, and BBC somehow has a problem with that, even if their country is mostly white. Can any of you guys relate to white people at all?
Traditionally, games have primarily been advertised at teenage boys, particularly white middle-class teenage boys. You then start to see this cycle of white middle-class men making games that reflect themselves, which means characters in games don't look like that black or Asian kid in inner-city London or Leeds, so it perpetuates this homogenous industry, and it's exactly the same in terms of gender.
You know what's also homogenous, BBC? United Kingdom in its entirety, you delusional buffoons.
Check the statistics.
It's about including a broad range of voices and experiences in your game so that people from different backgrounds see themselves represented. That is important because it might make them think that they can also come up with a cool story for a game with people in it who look like them.
Oh, finally, BBC gave us a reason in why this diversity problem needs to be solved. Because Senpai needs to notice more non-whites. That explains why you don't check the statistics. All of this argument about wanting more and more diversity is purely driven by emotions. Not once has these people ever thought, maybe because I'm living in a place where almost 90% of the people are white, that's why I don't really see myself in it. What are you guys going to do? Breed more non-whites to take over UK and kick every white people out? Maybe I'm not supposed to take this logically, which begs the question, why is this even on BBC if I'm not supposed to take it logically? It's from BBC and they're serious business, except the business that they're talking about is very emotionally driven. Since I couldn't care less about your emotions, my suggestion is you take it and shove it up yours.
There are more black leads coming too, but we just want to encourage even more diversity and more voices of young people who may otherwise think the games industry is not for them. But as an industry, we have to make the message clear that the door is open for everybody to tell their stories.
Why? Because I want Senpai to notice me. That's literally the reason. All of this diversity and representation nonsense is caused by a bunch of insecure twerps who haven't gotten enough attention from mommy and daddy. I've been saying in the past, and I'm gonna say it again because it's always true in every iteration, it's always purely driven out of emotions and the needs for people to please notice me, Senpai, notice me, 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 because my parents haven't noticed me enough. Talk about pathetic. You want to say that we gamers are the pathetic ones? Please talk more about how you cannot possibly relate to someone just because they have a different race or a different skin color than you.
As a British Asian female working in the industry, there's been some challenges. One example is a project I worked on where we were selecting 6 characters to be the faces of the game. At first, everyone in the room chose 6 white characters. I had to point out that none was black or Asian. It hadn't been considered to be an important factor, but it should have been, as changing it made the characters more relatable to many players.
You are a British Asian. Good for you. Now I want you to go watch this anime called School Days because you're Asian and tell me with a straight face that you can relate to with at least 5 of the characters. No? Well, I can explain this very well. Race does not determine whether or not you find someone relatable, and the only people who thinks that way needs to be put in an insane asylum.
Jobs in the games industry also need to be taken more seriously by the British Asian community. It's not a profession that's traditionally encouraged. We need to go back to our communities and schools to say, look, I'm an Asian woman that makes games. That's awesome, and you can do it too. To be able to say it to other Asian kids who love playing games but have not considered it as a career would help.
Okay, you're implying that people who love to play video games have not considered it as a career? For someone who is in the gaming industry, that perspective is very out of touch. And if they're not interested in developing video games, why would you force them? You're well aware that developing video games is very tough, right? The competition is tighter, the salary is getting less and less. It's a tough business market. Telling the Asian communities in Britain to be more interested in gaming is about the same chance of success as winning a lottery. But then again, since most of this article is driven purely out of emotion, I don't think logic can get straight through these people's heads. Wait, I phrased that wrong. It really went to their heads.
I do not think there's a diversity problem in the gaming industry. It is a very welcoming industry and small too, so everyone knows each other. I can only go by my experience, and I know quite a few British Asians in the industry, so I feel like there is diversity within the creative side of things. I know that 2K and Nintendo have South Asian staff as well, and Rockstar Games is a huge studio, and if you check the credits on their games like Grand Theft Auto, you will see Indian and Pakistani names there.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that BBC interviewed a diverse range of game developers or industry insiders, and this one is clearly different because this person is actually talking sense. I am shocked, mind you, that BBC allowed this to be printed on the website.
The roles they have are seldom public-facing, so maybe this is why there is a perception of there being a problem. Companies can always do more to improve diversity, but I think if you just pick the best talent and put background and race aside, you will find a mix of people come into the industry.
Oh, you mean people should be hired based on their skills and talent instead of race? That's a very dangerous opinion, BBC. Why would you let this person spread it? It's very contradictory to your premise. And for record, this is coming from the words of someone who worked at Konami Europe.
I don't think there will ever be a pushback for including more diverse content, but it just needs to make sense to do it. Doing it just for the sake of doing it will come across as disrespectful.
In other words, BBC, you are being disrespectful and this person is correct in assessing that. Now let's get into a different game developer.
There is a problem, but I think it's not with the industry itself, but that not enough people from a wide enough range of backgrounds are applying. This is not just an ethnic minority issue. Generally, video games still suffer from the label of not being a proper job to a lot of people.
Now that is also true. Not a lot of people are applying. And like I said before, even if every Asian, black, mixed, or other races apply for a job, that still wouldn't beat white people in its entirety. This person actually works with logic and BBC is working with emotions.
But when you reflect this into ethnic minority communities, it is amplified. Being from an Indian family, picking a career in video games industry can be a complete no-no. Luckily for me, I was headstrong. I did what I wanted to do, but not many people can escape family pressure.
Well, there we go. That shows to us that passion and optimism will break through the barriers. Great. Glad that BBC is also taking people who talk some sense.
Up until recently, video games have often suffered bad publicity as well, which has helped to create a negative perception. To improve diversity in the studios, we need more mentors and people to relate to. So if someone looks at me, they can say, okay, I can get a job there because someone who looks similar to me has been successful. It's important not to underestimate how important this is.
No, that doesn't motivate me at all, actually. What motivates me is the fact that I can make awesome video games, not the fact that someone who looks like me can actually get into gaming. That shows to me that people don't care about gaming at all and only care about finding their allies in the battlefield. Yeah, as if that freaking matters. In conclusion, BBC wants the gaming industry senpai to notice them and they hire people who cannot possibly relate to individuals with a different skin color. Things that just don't really matter at all in the equation, and BBC wants to make it as if it's the most important thing. It's not, BBC. It's not. It's not. The cock says it's not.